Hello, good evening, it's William here from WCP Models. Tonight we'll be building a quarter-ton trailer. This one here, this is what we made earlier. Folding jockey wheel, working suspension, got bearings in the wheels. And obviously normally these trailers would be towed behind a quarter-ton utility truck, like what we have here. This is one of our models as well, and it's a fully RC ready model. Right, okay, on with the build. So before we get started, this is how we print all the parts. This is just a whole kit ready to go. You can see that we print in FDM and it's all got the flashing on it. But we spent a little bit of time and we've just cleaned up these parts here, and we'll be assembling this one right now. Okay. I think we'll start with the wheels. So this is just a wheel that we've done earlier. You can see that it's got a stub axle in there and the bearing's already pressed in. Here's another one just to show the bearing is already pressed in. We now have a brass bushing insert which we just push into the back. That's now pushed in. And now what we're going to do is just assemble our stub axle, which is just a bolt, and feed it through. Now when I'm doing this, it's just sometimes easier just to get something just to hold the brass bushing, because it will spin. Excuse the fashioning up here. This is probably the most tricky thing to do on this build, but we need to get this bit right. Right. Just need to check that it's free running. It is. We've now got these tiny little nuts. I'm going to put 2 of these on because this will allow us to set or preset the bushing and the bearing together. So the first one, nip up and no more. Yeah, there we are. And the second one is going to lock that one in place. And just get a pair of pliers on the second nut and nip it. There we are. So free running. Now these are the tyres. These are actually FDM printed out of TPU material. We're not actually going to fit them on here, but if we were, what we would be doing is pushing it in from the back of the wheel and pushing it in place. They are really tight to put on, but they have a good nice grip. But I say we're going to keep them off just because the person who's bought this trailer wants to paint these wheels, so do that first. Right, this is the axle, and in the end of the axle we actually have threaded brass inserts which are already press fit in there. And what we're going to do here, we're going to take the wheels and we're just going to tighten them up. There we are. And the other one. This has got our wheels fitted on here. Right, so the next job to do is now to put these leaf springs. They do have a bit of flex in there as well. We've got these short little bolts, and they're going to set in the recess. Right. That's one. And there's 2 of these bolts per leaf spring, just to make sure that it does actually sit in there nice and square. our axle and leaf spring setup. Right, the next thing we're going to do is now start to assemble the chassis. You can see put like the wooden board effect underneath. Yeah, now what we need to do is actually put the little mounts in. So these are tiny little mounts. We're going to actually solvent weld these in place so there's something for the leaf spring to sit on. So I'm going to get out our trusty plastic weld from EMA. It's really good stuff. And we've got the windows open in here as well. And we're just going to use an old clean brush, or cleanish brush, to apply the solvent weld. So into the place where we're going to put it. And press fit that in place. Just make sure it's pushed in nicely. So I'm going to do that again. Okay. We're now going to put the mounts on the outside piece. And these ones have a tiny little reset in there. Do the same on the other side. As you can see now, somewhere for the front mount of the leaf spring to sit. Now the ones on the back are a little bit thicker. They mount in the back. So they mount in here again using the solvent weld. Make sure we get it the right way around. There we are. So that's pushed in nicely. And a bit more on the other side, and the same again. Now these have got quite a tight fit on all of these parts, so some filing, some fettling might be required, but once you've added them in, that's what it's going to look like. Right, the next thing is actually setting up this front of the trailer, which is where the tow hitch is going to sit. Just try not to throw it across the table. And in the front of this hitch, you'll see there's a tiny little brass bushing inserted. And what we're going to do is take this rod end, which is going to be our tow hitch end, and we've got another bolt, and we're going to install this. So, bolt, going to put that through here from the back, and okay. Okay. Now we don't want this to be extremely tight because we want there to be some ability for the tow hitch to rotate, which is what we've got there. Right, that is now ready to fit on the front here. So back to the solvent weld again. We're just going to put a lot of that around this area here on the front, so the sides and that area, and we're also going to put it on the mating surface there as well. And we carefully slide that into position. We need to make sure the front is nice and flush. And we're going to probably put on a little bit more because we want this to be nicely welded in place. Now this might seem a bit extreme, but if you're careful, it works really nicely. We're just going to use a pair of pliers just to try and very carefully pinch this into position. Now you might, well, you definitely won't be able to see this on the camera, but as we're pushing this together, there's actually tiny bits of the plastic actually squeezing out the side. Obviously it's melting the surface layers of the plastic and it's then bonding together. So there we have that bond in there like that. Now, we've got this tiny little L bracket. There's actually some tiny little rivets that are printed into it. You will not be able to see that on this camera, but they actually are going to be pointing as if the rivets are going to go down through the chassis itself. So we're going to bond that on the front. The best bit here is just to run a line along the front there. And we need to just make sure we sit it on there nice and flush on the front face. And make sure it's sitting central as well. So it's sitting like that. And what I'm also going to do is, now it's on there, I'm going to run just a bead of silver weld along the back edge as well. Okay, so while we're rushing through this build, next thing to do is put the jockey arm on. So that's going to sit in here at the front, and we're going to put a bolt through there. So just start it from one side. Okay. Just very carefully just bolt this through. Okay, so now we have a jockey arm that folds up and down. Sorted. Okay, so what we're going to do next is now we're going to mount the axle onto the chassis. Now, to get this the right way round even, there's a smaller rounded end and there's a larger rounded end. The larger one goes at the back, the smaller one goes at the front. And what we're going to do is line that up in here. There we have it. So it sits in there like that. And we're going to take these bolts again and run them through. Now ideally we should really give these joints some time to glue for the purpose of the video. Obviously we don't want to wait for the glue to set for too long, otherwise it'd be a very long video. But there's the front one on one side done. Put the one on the other side as well. Just going to get them just so they're poking through the other side and just no more, because we've got some nylocks to fit in a minute. So we have the hinge in the front, and now the tricky bit is taking these tiny little shackles. I'm going to mount 2 bolts in these. We're going to pass that through the mount on the bottom. Okay, I'm going to mount the other one on the other side. Right, so it's poking through on that side. We'll do the same thing again for the other side. So you can see that one on that side. We're now going to repeat it on this side. Okay. Now what we need to do is line up this part. So the rear part of the leaf spring needs to line up with these shackles now, and we'll bolt it through. That's one side done. Now we do the same on the other side. Okay, so just to show very quickly, so we've got working leaf spring, and we've also got the working wheels as well. Right, so that's the chassis more or less done. Just got some small details to add. We've got these tiny little, I don't know if you can see, tiny little light units. Now these will weld onto the back there on both sides. I'm actually going to leave these off for the next person who's going to receive this, because they might want to put lights in these, and they are actually hollow, so you can actually put lights in them as well anyway. So we're going to leave them off for the purpose of this build. The next thing is now the bucket itself. So it comes in a few parts. We've got the top, which is going to sit on here. We've got these wheel arches, which we're going to glue in here as well. So what we'll do first is we're going to mount this top piece. So the solvent weld is going to come out again. We're going to run it all the way along. Okay, and I'm just going to press it into place. Try and line it up a bit better. Just going to put some more under there. Right. So I'm going to turn it upside down, put some pressure on it, and then I run another bead along all the way around. Again, at this stage, we want to make sure it is actually sitting square. Right, push that home. We need to make sure that it's not overlapping anywhere on the inside, which in this case it isn't. So that's the top on. Now what we want to do is put the mud guards on. So there's actually a thicker end which is going to come to the outside to make it look like a rolled front edge. What we're going to do, you can see there's actually a little cutout there. We're going to put some solvent weld in there, and then all we're going to do is align that. And what you want to do here is make sure that it's even, so that it's sticking out the same each side, front and back. So that's the first one. We're now going to put the other one on. Again, rolled edge, the thicker edge at the front or the outside, and we're going to line this up so again it's nice and even. So just take your time on this bit. There we are. And once you're happy, you can then put some more solvent weld on the inside and the outside edge. Just helps make sure there's a nice strong bond there. There we have it. Okay. And the final thing, again, we're not going to do this for the video, but we're going to mount that onto there. Again, we're going to use solvent weld, with solvent weld all over this and on the back. We put the two surfaces together, and what you want to have is this front edge here. So if you remember, we put that L bracket on. it has to be flush with the front. It's going to sit in there like that. Now what you want to do is make sure, you'll see that these raised sections, like the reflectors, the lights, they're at the back. And as I say, this is what we made earlier. This one's actually in grey primer. We just threw some grey primer on it. Still needs a little bit of cleaning up before we put some paint on it. But yeah, that's more or less it, ready to go. As I said, we've got some nylocks, some tiny little nylocks. What we would do is just fit them on the back of these so that there's a nut on the end of the bolt, so it should help hold it in place. But we're going to leave it like that for now. Thank you for watching. See you later.